our conversation talking all about music, sound, frequency, and how it affects our bodies. And this is so powerful. There's so many things on the subject. Like I've seen things about people using sound for healing certain components of their body, about the effects of different kinds of music, even the words in music affecting physical things. So this is so interesting to dive into and learn the real science behind everything, the facts, the research. So we have our incredible neuropsychologist here, Aubrey, to share with us some of the science that she's found. And if you want to dive deeper on this, we also talked about this in the last YouTube video, so you can go back and watch that to hear even more of the research. So thanks for being here, Aubrey.
Yeah, of course. I love it. I'm so excited. So last week, like you mentioned, Reese, we chatted about the way that sound can, like soundscapes can influence us, right? We talked about binaural beats and entrainment. So if you're interested in this stuff, definitely check out the video, as Reese already mentioned. This week, we figured we'd talk a little bit more about music because there's a lot out there on music, a lot of questions we get about music and healing, music and personal growth. The thing I like to just like call attention to when it comes to sound is I've always been a huge fan. I've worked as like a licensed mental health provider for 15 years. I've worked as a coach for 15 years. Music has always really driven a lot of the actual sessions that I do, believe it or not. So a lot of my, one-on-one sessions, but just in general, when I'm working with myself through coming up with a new idea or a goal, I've always really loved working with music. And I have this like theory that I think our brain really lights up in the face of music, um, because we're such good pattern seekers as humans. And I think that music gives us a chance. It's like very rare to have a non physical stimulus in our world that gives us so much of a response. Right. And so I think that it gives us a chance to really explore something new, and our brains really are wired to listen to music automatically and try to make sense of it. And so that's sort of my theory behind, a lot of the science that I see popping up around music, how powerful it is, and how it can even support healing, as Reese mentioned. So, one of the cool things I think to kind of like open our minds to is this idea that music really does light up our brain, for lack of a better term, and activates certain parts of our brain. And depending on the kind of music it is, so it's speed, like it's tempo, whether there's lyrics or not, if it's instrumental or something that has words, it lights up different centers of our brain that start trying to look for patterns. First of all, this is great because it gets our neuroplasticity going. And we know that there's a ton of research on there about how listening to music when you're a baby can help support learning all different sorts of things, like languages, for example. And part of that is probably because our neuroplasticity is just working at such full speed when you're listening to music. Your brain's already in this like molding kind of process. It's a great time to encode new things and to prune away patterns that you don't need, right? And so that's why it supports language from infancy. But it also helps us kind of like create this filter for our reality as well. And so we talk about that a lot in the SFI method, right? The filter that we have as we walk throughout the world. Music is a huge part of that filter, interestingly enough. So, for example, there's research that suggests that if you don't have any music playing and you're looking at a neutral face, you'll see a neutral face. So say I'm looking at you, Reese, right now, like you're pretty neutral. Like I'll feel into that right now. You're smiling, and so of course I'll feel like the happy emotions. But I'll see, that you're kind of feeling neutral, and I'll have, it'll influence our conversation together, our energy. But if we're listening to music and say we're listening to something really sad in the background, or if someone nearby in our co-working space has sad music on, even though your face is neutral, same exact face, I'll start to interpret it as you being sad, and that will really influence things. And then the same thing is true for other emotions as well. So happiness, anger. Music tends to kind of bend our reality with that filter when it comes to things like I mentioned, emotional perception, but also time. So sometimes if we are gearing up for like a really big, let's say, workout at the gym, it's a great idea to have music that will pump us up, not just because we have this abstract pumping up that we get from music, but because music entrains with us and it helps our body kind of feel connected to that entrainment. We don't really notice the passage of time. It minimizes our feelings of pain and fatigue, and we're able to do things a little bit differently because our perception's just different, right? If you went to the gym and you started listening to like really slow, like sad music, it's going to probably slow down your sense of time. It's going to feel like a harder workout, right? And so there's so many ways we can apply this in our daily life. And I think sometimes when we're emotional, If our body needs a cry, we'll probably crave listening to sad music. But if we're ready to kind of like come out of it, right, we're still going to start to crave listening to like happy music, right, or to something that'll make us smile. And that's because our body really is heightening its processing, its emotional processing around music. So there's something very intrinsic to humans when it comes to responding to music in that way. And then I know I'm talking like a bunch, but just like I feel like this is really, it's just fun to kind of wrap our mind around it. The one final thing I'll say before, if you want to chit chat, Reese, is does it affect healing, right? Does music affect healing? This is a question we get all the time. And I feel like I did a really big search actually this past week. We try to be very transparent at Supplies. So if I feel like something's kind of mixed, I'll look into it before making my definitive opinion and sharing that. And I honestly was very surprised by how much support I found in the peer-reviewed research for a lot of the healing that you can find in the face of sound. There are some studies that have been debunked, so always please look into that. But for the most part, you'll find that there are pretty clear links between listening to certain kinds of music and seeing increases in antibodies, for example. The IgA antibody was one that I found in a lot of research. We mentioned in one of our videos anti-inflammatory cytokines, right? So things that will bring down inflammation. This has also been found in the research. And so if you look at the sort of indirect ways that can support your physiological healing, you'll start to see that actually makes a lot of sense, right? And so I'm a big fan of doing that sort of research and was very pleasantly surprised by what I found. And I just encourage you, if this is of interest to you, definitely take a peek. We can pop a study or two down in the notes for this video if you want to sort of just like get it started. And if you want to just take a peek, go ahead into Google Scholar, which is a peer-reviewed search engine, and just type in the kind of music you're interested in and see what comes up, what papers come up. But yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Reese. What do you think about all of that? Like, does it kind of resonate? Because it resonates with me.
That totally resonates. And I feel like music is such a form of hypnosis. Like, it's so funny. People are like, oh, I don't believe in hypnosis. Like, well, you listen to music and like you could hear a song, you could hear the first few notes of a song. And if it's a happy song, you feel happy. And if it's a sad song, you feel sad. And I'll even catch myself like, when you get a song stuck in your head, it's like you get a song stuck in your head and then you'll often find like, oh, I'm kind of living or feeling in alignment with this song that's been stuck in my head. Maybe I need to change the song that's been stuck in my head. And it's so funny because like we could be sitting there like scrolling. It's like one song is happy, one song is sad. It's like you're just like it's like this emotional like roller coaster on your phone. But yeah, songs and then the words inside the songs can be so like such a form of hypnosis and make such a huge impact on our emotions. And then when we know what we know about like emotions, the emotions that we're feeling are creating chemicals in our body. It makes sense that it can either support or take away from healing, or even just support or take away from the different chemicals that are being released, like IgA, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said too, I didn't mention it, but let's definitely run that point home. Be careful what you're listening to, right? Make sure it's in alignment with what you want, because this is one of the cases where it's very clear evidence that we do unconsciously process lyrics. Very, very strong case for that. And so we're constantly seeking out those patterns. And in fact, interestingly, when we are listening to music with lyrics, we're processing the lyrics so much that it actually turns off a lot of our critical processing, right? So we're not really thinking about it. We're not asking ourselves, is this true? Is this weird? Is this like, we're not really questioning it. Interestingly enough. And so when we're listening to music that's instrumental, we're very much in a place of questioning, abstract thinking, critical thinking. But if there's lyrics, we're kind of just paying attention and listening as if it's a conversation, because we're trying to make sense of it. So just be very aware, right, of what you're putting into your environment, because you're constantly going to be processing that. It's building your unconscious mind for sure.
So true. And knowing that the subconscious mind learns through repetition. It's like you're hearing the same song over and over again, maybe with lyrics that aren't supportive of your health or your relationship or whatever it is. Like that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so many cool things surrounding music. I highly encourage you to check it out. If you want to just play a little game, maybe see if you put on like a scene in a movie that's like maybe scary, play some like happy music and see if you kind of process it the same, you probably won't. And same thing, if you're watching something kind of sad and play happy music over it, you're probably going to have that conflicting feeling as well. And you'll kind of get a sense of how your body's just processing on all these levels at the same time. Music is a huge factor in our processing. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, that is so interesting. Like, as humans, we've been listening to music from the beginning of time. So it's obviously something that's so ingrained in who we are. So, yeah, thank you so much. If you have any of those links from the research, send them over. We'll put them below the video. And thanks to everyone who's watching. So if you're watching, you have questions about this, if you want to learn more, maybe we need to do a part 3, let us know below in the comments. And if you love learning about the science behind all the work that we do, then check out the links that we will post below. But thank you so much for being here today, Aubrey.
Thank you. It was great. I'll see you soon.